Welcome to Mind Over Matter, where we feature young Jamaicans who are shooting for the stars. I'm your host, Margaret Boyne. The rise of social media has brought with it the rise of food content creators and influencers. The Wongagyal brand, started in 2019, has tapped into this phenomenon by showcasing our food, culture, and history. My guest is a food content creator, a food photographer. Those pics of food on Instagram, you can make money from them. And she's also a podcast host. My guest is Tianna Chung, and we will talk all about Wongagyal today. Welcome to Mind Over Matter, Tianna. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
The first question I have to ask is Wongagyal. Where did you get this name from? How did you choose that?
Can I tell you, that's what everybody asks me. Like the first question everybody always asks me is, where did Wongagyal come from? And to be very fair, I can't even remember the exact moment that I came up with the name. But what I can say is, when thinking about a name because it was originally just an Instagram page. It was just a fun, like it wasn't anything serious. But in the back of my mind, being on social media, I was like, okay, even though I'm not taking this serious now, like, what if it blows up one day? It has to be something that at least has a good name, and that I could, turn into something long term if I wanted to, or if the opportunity arose. And so I knew that I wanted the name to be Jamaican. Because I am Jamaican. But I didn't want it to be like 876 or JA, because at the time I was not living in Jamaica. I was going to school in New York, and I wasn't sure if I was going to come back to Jamaica, and so I kind of didn't want to put myself in this box of JA or 876, and then I'm not actually based there. So I just started to think of all, the foodie terms that are kind of authentic to Jamaica and telling. And of course, Wongagot came to my head. And, I feel like Wongagot is kind of one could call it like a derogatory term. Like
yes.
It's not a nice feeling for somebody to call you Wanga.
Yes.
And so, I think that's where it came from. It was just kind of almost like reclaiming this name that was, not that I was called Wongagot when I was younger, but I'm sure if I had a bully, they probably would, because I really did love food. But I just liked Wanga, and, rather than Wongagot, which can sound a bit crass, I did Wongagyal because, I am a girl, I'm a gal. And I just thought, having that patois flair would be very indicative of the roots, which is Jamaica, without being, 876 or JA or JM or something like that. So that's where it really came from.
Okay. Back in the day, one of our DJs had a song called Wongagot Tiger. And we didn't like, if you call us Wongagot, boy, we didn't like it at all.
No, even Popcorn, I think Popcorn just came out with a song, and like something just like, baby, Wongagot. And I'm like, well.
Oh gosh. So where does the story of Wongagyal begins? Where did the idea come from?
So while I was at school, I had the opportunity to do a cultural immersion trip to Trinidad. So I actually spent 4 months in Trinidad. I went to school there, and it was my first time in another Caribbean country. And I think that's where I fell in love with food, for real. Like, I always love food. Like, anybody can tell you, my mother will tell you, I did love my belly from a born. But I think that trip to Trinidad really opened my eyes. And I guess not just fell in love with food, but food and culture, specifically Caribbean food culture. Because it was the first time that I realized that as much as we're all the same in terms of, we we tend to be grouped the same, like Caribbean, because we're all from the English speaking Caribbean, we all probably eat the same things and do the same things. And it was actually getting to visit another Caribbean country for the first time and live there for basically like 4 months. I realized that our eating patterns are so different from Trinidadian eating patterns. And it was really just an observation that I was making as I was exploring Trinidad. And then through that cultural immersion program, I got the opportunity to go to Cuba for a week. And so I was in Cuba and I was, getting a taste of Spanish Caribbean cuisine. And I noticed how different that was over there. And so it was just like during this whole trip, I was like just taking pictures of all of the food that I was eating because I was just so amazed at how different and, just different, and the stories that each dish that I was eating was telling. And so I ended up with all of these pictures in my phone, and then I was like, maybe I should put them somewhere,
Yeah.
and then I just started the Instagram account. I started just posting them there. As I said, it was just for fun. It was kind of just sharing my trip through food with my friends on Instagram. And that's kind of where it started. And it's now where it is now.
Wow. So can you tell us what is a food content creator?
Right. So a food content creator would be someone who, I guess, creates photo, video, visual and audio content that is surrounded, that encompasses food. The main subject is food, whether it's, how you make food, the history of food, the culture of food, eating food. Content nowadays, they like to say content is king because, social media is really, it's just taking over the place. And so it's like, you can't be in the social media world without hearing content. Food content is just anything that you post on social that has to do with food. If you take a picture and you post it on your personal Instagram, that's food content right there.
So can you cook? Or you don't have
Me
to?
Personally? Oh yeah, I cook. I do. I definitely cook. I grew up in one of those cooking households. My mother was a big cook, and she was one of those mothers that was like, you're not going to sit down in the house on a Sunday while I cook dinner. Like, you have to keep, even if it's chop up the lettuce for the salad, you're going to be in the kitchen with me, So, and of course, at that time, I hated it because it just felt like a chore. Like I wanted to be watching TV. But, as I got older and, I went to school abroad by myself, and I'm now a fully fledged adult apparently. and my father doesn't cook. And so it was like, once I came back to Jamaica and I was living with my father, it was a lot of the cooking ended up falling on me. And so I do cook. Sometimes I do chronicle my cooking adventures on Wongagyal as well. But I'm not a chef, so it's just amateur hour when it comes down to cooking and me.
So you talk about social media. How much time do you have to spend on social media to be a successful food content creator?
Well, I think it's one of those things that I don't think you necessarily have to spend a lot of time specifically on the platform itself, because a lot of content creation, and this is what people I think don't realize, it's a lot of behind the scenes. It's a lot of prepping. Like the majority, I mean, granted, I do spend a lot of time on social media, but it's not all just social, and I'm on my phone every minute, like it's, sometimes it's preparing the food, it's getting the food, it's taking the pictures, it's creating the videos, then it's editing it. And then, of course, after all of that, what you actually see on social is like the end of a very lengthy process, But then, of course, just in the whole scope of social media, you don't want to just post and go. You want to post, you want to engage with your audience. You want to be liking things, you want to be following other food content creators as well. Something that I value a lot in my food content journey is creating a community around food. So on Wongagyal, like I don't want to be one of those people who like I just post and the conversation ends there. No, like so many of I've made so many friends with my followers because, and I mean, they're like, I still haven't met half of them or more than half of them in real life, but I post something, they respond to me, it turns into a conversation. Sometimes it turns into a whole podcast episode. So I end up spending the majority of my time spent on social media would probably be for the sake of community building and community engagement, because I do try to talk with my audience and my community a lot. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they're the people that I'm serving, So yeah.
Okay. Some of these spots that you highlight, where do you find them? Do you just drive out in the country or somebody call you up and tell you about these places?
Honestly, it's social media. A lot of places I find out from social media.
Okay.
And word of mouth as well. I feel like I have a lot of foodie friends as well. So they're always telling me about when a new restaurant is popping up. Through Wongagyal, I've made a couple, chef friends and restaurateur friends. So if they're engaging in any projects, sometimes they'll invite me or they'll, just tell me, oh, this is going on. Check it out when you can, kind of thing. But yeah, for the most part, I would say social media is the biggest place that I find food recommendations from. And so it's almost like when I go there, I feel like I have to pay it back and allow everyone else to know about it, So yeah, that's where I find.
So do you get free food or how is it done?
I do get free food. Probably too much free food. Honestly, most of the times when I go out to restaurants, those things aren't free. So if I go to a restaurant, I will pay for my meal. I take pictures and I will post, just because sometimes when you do things for free, they expect, there's a certain expectation for you to say, oh my God, this was amazing. And if it wasn't amazing, I'm not going to say it was amazing, Yes. I don't ever want to get kind of in that trap.
Yeah.
But I will have times where people, especially, with COVID, a lot of people started selling food, like not in a proper restaurant, but, they just started doing like meals from their house, or they did like a catering thing. And so that's probably where I get the most free food. It's like people starting up their business and they're like, hey, I'm going to send a lunch for you. Just let me know what you think. You don't have to post anything, but I just want your feedback, kind of thing. So there'll be a lot of days where I just get free lunch and that's great. I get a lot of products to try. I get a lot of gift baskets. So yeah, on the free food front, like I feel like I can't go hungry at this point. There's always food in my house.
All right. So you're a food photographer. What skills do you need to be a food photographer?
Well, I will always say that I'm still learning, because I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable just being like, I'm a food blogger and I know it all, Concerning skills, definitely, I made the decision to invest in a DSLR camera, because before I made that investment, I was just taking photos with my phone, with my iPhone. And I still take photos with my phone now. It's just that I realized that I wanted Wongagyal not just to be a blog, but I wanted to, be able to do like product shots. And that's not something that everyone is interested in, and that's fine, but that's just where I wanted my brand to go. And so I made the investment into getting a DSLR camera. I, paid for the subscription for Lightroom. I did a lot of photography masterclasses. There's actually one that I'm planning to do in the future that's a bit more holistic, a bit more like robust. But yeah, it's just I think in food photography, it's just having an eye For food, it's knowing how to work with different foods, knowing like the lighting and stuff like that. As I said, it's still a learning process. And I think the best thing to do is to just surround yourself on social media with people who are doing the same thing. And one, they will give you advice when you need it. And two, they will give you inspiration when you need it. And so, yeah, it's not as difficult or as like far-fetched, but it still definitely requires some sort of skill and inspiration and creativity at the end of the day. Yeah.
Okay, so what is your creative process like?
My creative process is, most of the times I will think of, like, for example, like if Easter is coming up or something like that, I'll be like, okay, I know I want to post something for Easter. If it's a picture, I'll be like, okay, last year I did a picture of bun and cheese. I worked with Maxfield Bakery and we did a bun and cheese campaign. And so they were like, okay, we want some photos of bun and cheese. And I remember I go on Pinterest a lot. I don't use Pinterest outside of when I'm looking for inspiration. So I go on Pinterest. I look for pictures of bun and cheese. I look for pictures of bread and cheese. I go on Google Images and I just honestly just look for other things that other people are doing. And from so I kind of create my own personal mood board in a sense. And then from that, I will pick and choose what I want to do. Of course, I don't make a habit of imitating anyone else's work. So, they're truly just inspiration. I will go to the pharmacy or go to Azan's and I'll buy props. So it's like plates or like napkins, forks, cutlery, those kind of things. And then I have a little studio set up in my office. It's very, very like not professional, like thrown together kind of thing. And yeah, I will just spend like a good like half an hour to an hour, like setting the scene, taking photos. If it doesn't work, I change it around. And then after that, it goes to my computer. I play around with it on Lightroom and it gets posted. Yeah.
Okay. So persons might feel that, boy, it is just taking a picture, but a lot goes into it.
Yeah, a lot goes into it.
How long does it take to get that perfect shot?
It depends. It depends. I personally don't have a lot of patience, and that's probably one of my biggest downfalls. And so like when I have an idea in my head, like I just want to execute. Like I'm just like, we have to do this now. Like I need to go to Fontana now, and I need to buy this plate, and I need to go to the no. So I try to do things as efficiently as possible, but honestly, it also depends. I remember one time I was doing a shoot with coffee roasters, and I took pictures. I spent maybe like an hour and a half ish, like setting up the shot, lighting the shot, taking the pictures, and then I spent maybe about another 45 minutes to an hour editing the photo. Sent off the photo, and then they were like, okay, so we don't really like this lighting. We don't really like the composition. So we're going to ask you to reshoot. So then that turned into a whole other day of doing the same thing. So yeah, it does take time. One picture does take time because, and then of course, it's not like you just take one picture and then you're done. It's like, you take anywhere, like for one scene, for one setup, I'll take like at least 10 photos so that I can pick and choose. And then of course, after you take those 10 photos, I'm like looking through them and trying to decide which one I like the best, which one I don't like. I usually consult my sister. I just send them to her and be like, which one do you think is good? So it's a lot that goes behind it. And I wish more people understood that. But it is what it is.
So food is big business now, and brands have been partnering with influencers. What are some of the brands that you've worked with so far?
So I said I worked with Maxfield Bakery last year. Most recently, I worked with Welch's over the Christmas. Some of the bigger brands, I've done stuff with Betty Crocker. I've worked with CB Foods, Caribbean Passion, Smart Eggs. I've done stuff with Brunswick tuna. Wow, who else? I feel like there's so many now. Yeah, I guess those would be the bigger names. I've done stuff with Old El Paso as well. Juicy Patties is probably my most successful campaign to date.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a journey.
Okay. Tell us about your podcast and your co-host, Ashley.
Yeah. For a long time, I knew I wanted to have a podcast. Even before Wongagyal, I was like, I love to talk. As you can see from this interview. So I always knew that I feel like I would end up either in a podcast or on radio or something like that.
Okay.
And after Wongagyal started and I moved back to Jamaica, it was like, okay, well, I already have this thing. I already have Wongagyal. I was buying more books and learning more about food specific to the Caribbean and Jamaica. And I was like, I feel like a lot of people in Jamaica don't really have these conversations about food. They just eat food and then go about their business. And they don't realize that there's like it's a whole thing. It's a whole journey. Getting the food in front of you. And then it's a whole journey of getting the food inside you. Like it's a whole thing, And so I asked Ashley is my best friend. We went to high school together and she's also a big foodie. And I think I decided that I didn't really want to do the podcast alone because it's always nice to have energy to feed off of. And so I asked her if she wanted to do it with me and she said yes. And that's what we're doing now. Yeah,
and I must say that, boy, you seem to have a good vibe. I like listening to you girls, man.
Thank you.
I like it a lot. So as you said, Ashley, that Jamaicans tend to they don't explore, they don't like to try new foods, right? So how do you think you can help in that regard in terms of your podcast?
So I think that's the whole point of Wongagyal in and of itself, is allowing people, whether it's a Jamaican audience or an international audience, to know that, of course, Jamaica is like jerk chicken, porridge, of course, we're like the king of pudding and those things, but to know that there's so much more that is available here. Because I think far too often, Jamaicans, and I can say from experience of knowing even people who migrate to the US and they still eat brown stew chicken and oxtail and rice and peas. They're in a whole new country with a whole different set of, cuisine and culture, and they still cling to the same thing that they grew up eating. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, I just, there are too many options for me to eat the same thing all the time, every day. And you don't need to migrate and you don't need to travel. You don't need to go to Italy to have pasta. You don't need to go to France to have escargot because it's right here. There are restaurants that have it available right here. And of course, it may not feel super authentic because you haven't gone on a plane. And of course, you're not getting, fresh fish that's come out of Sicilian waters. Of course not. But at least you're getting to explore another culture, even if it is offshore. And so, so that's that. In a nutshell, that's what Wongagyal is to me. Is just allowing people to know that there's more than Jamaican food in Jamaica to be explored.
Which country would you like to travel to for its food and its culture that you haven't been before?
Italy. I just said it, but Italy. So when I was in college, we had to do there was a second language requirement. And I did Spanish and French in high school. So wanted to do that. Couldn't get into those classes, ended up doing Italian. So I took a semester of Italian, intensive Italian, and a part of learning that was doing the culture and the food and stuff. I was very close to doing a double major in Italian, just to be able to go on a trip to Italy that all Italian majors do. I need to get the real tiramisu. Like I need to be there and have so yeah, Italy is the place that I'm most interested in going to just explore for the food. Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you faced trying to build your brand, and how did you overcome them?
Biggest challenge that I faced is probably dealing with brands. And this is not specific to food content. I think this is something that in general influencers and content creators in Jamaica are having a challenge with. For the same reason that just like how we had the conversation of you didn't realize that so much went into creating the content, you know, that's what I think a lot of people think, oh, you just set up your phone and you just take a little picture and you take a little video and that's the end of it. And because a lot of people have that idea, I think, of content creation, sometimes it's very hard when they're demanding a lot for very little monetary return. And it's like at some point you have to say, how much is my time and effort and skill worth? And I think in Jamaica Jamaica is relatively new to the digital space. We're growing very rapidly, but as it relates to access to technology and stuff, we're definitely not where like the US is, for example. So I think this whole idea of like influencers and, you know, building out an influencer social strategy campaign and stuff, it's very new for a lot of businesses. And so sometimes I find that people will reach out to me and ask me to create like 5-minute videos for very little money. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
Like this, creating a 1-minute video is like a half-day ordeal.
Yeah.
Like, and it's incredibly tiring. It's like shooting and reshooting, and if something goes wrong you have to do it over again, and then of course after that you have to edit it all, and you have to ensure that the sound is right, and if your mic chip out you have to film it over, and you know there are all these things that go into it. And I think that is the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is just being recognized for your worth when corporate entities reach out to you. In terms of getting over it, I think it's one of those things that I'm still learning how to get over it. But I think as I grow in terms of my authority in the space,
right?
Because of course, when I was like just starting out, I barely had like 1,000 followers. Like I felt like I needed to just do anything.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, you want me to do this for free? Sure. I'm still growing. Whereas like, I feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm learning how to value myself more. Right. And I think once as I learn to value myself more, and as I learn to realize my own worth, saying no to mediocre compensation becomes much easier. So yeah.
Do you find time to do anything else that doesn't entail food?
Well, Wongagyal is not my main source of income. So Wongagyal at this point, although it's fairly successful, and I do see some returns from my investments in Wongagyal, it's not at the point where I can
live
all the time,
Yeah.
So I do have a job. I am a social media manager. I am a copywriter, digital marketer in a sense. So I do that from 9 to 5, and then everything else is afterward, or I'll try to, use my lunchtime to do Wongagyal related things, or on the weekends. It's just go for me at this point. But I'm one of those people who really also values time to do nothing. So I try really hard to schedule my time around doing other things that interest me. And just, some of those things that interest me is just like watching Netflix.
Right.
Or
Just
going to the beach,
relaxing.
just relaxing. Yeah.
So what's next for Wongagyal?
Well, I'm working on my website. So I do want to go into the digital space that way. I want to have a website. I want to have a blog on a larger scale. I also want to officially launch a shop through that website. I have some products that I'm thinking about still working through the kinks.
Early stages, yeah.
Yeah, very early stages, but yeah, that's where I want it to be. If you're familiar with like BuzzFeed and tasting,
yes,
that's where I want Wongagyal to be. I want Wongagyal to be the BuzzFeed of the Caribbean, or like the food BuzzFeed of the Caribbean. Yeah. So that's what's next. That's long term.
Well, it was great talking to Tianna, and I must say, boy, all the best, and hope that all your dreams will be realized with this Wongagyal brand.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to looking at your pictures too.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is a great interview. Thank you.
Thanks, man.